we're back. This is part 3 of my bass production mini series. First one we made the sub bass for the harmonic overtones, so we had something to distort. Second one we made some mid-range from distorting, filtering, and doing some sort of automation and stuff to try and get some interesting sounds that we recorded. And this last one, I'm gonna go through what we recorded last time. I've picked out a few little bits and bobs, and we're going to start having a think about arranging them, chucking some of the nice little bits we made into a sampler, mucking around with the sampler, and trying to get a very rough sort of arrangement. It won't sound great because there's not really enough time to make a proper track, but hopefully it will give you some sort of insight into how I arrange my basses, and we'll do some like automation and transitions and stuff like that. So yeah, let's get into it. This is a long file of what we recorded. So this was our channel, which had all of our sort of different bits and bobs on, which I've then bounced into this. So lots of different sort of movements. All of the different filtering. Different envelope patterns. Some gnarly sort of amplifier distortion. Some nice bits there. Lots of nice stuff there. That sounded cool. Pull that out. And this is kind of what I do. I'll go through and listen to bits randomly. And when I find something that I think has got an interesting bit of movement in it, just pull it out. There's no point in trying to be too precise about these things at the moment. I've already got a few here that I've pulled out just to get the idea, but so you don't have to sit here watching me listening through the whole thing. But yeah, this is basically the vibe. That could be something which could be filtered, maybe not, whatever. Cool. Anyway, so you get the idea, yeah? I've gone through and I just pulled out some bits really quickly. Once I've done that, I'll show you a couple of different things. So it's good to, quite often what I'll do is duplicate the bits that I've pulled out, and I'll keep one which is a reference of the whole file. So when I'm playing with it over the beat, if I hold down Command, Alt and Shift on Ableton, you see the hand changes to this little thing, the mouse pointer, changes to this little hand, and you can scrub the audio, which is cool if you're trying to get an envelope to swing with a beat. And the reason I duplicate it is because also what I'll do is consolidate, which is Command J. So I've got them as is to chuck into a sampler. Anyway, right, let's get rid of this for now, so we're not going on for too long. Chuck these up here. Let's get rid of this. So we've still got our break. In fact, I'll move that right out of the way for now. So this is a break that I made for another tune, which is the same one that we were playing with last time. So to begin with, what I did was just have a listen to the very start of the tune. Cool. So you get the idea. It's not, you know, it could be it's not particularly hooky at the moment, but it doesn't sound too bad. Obviously, it's raw, so there's no real like. I could like. Is this playing something? Oh, it's still playing that as well. Sorry. Yeah. So we've got a little kind of lazy, loose, wobbly vibe. I love this sort of stuff, man. Like just a break beat and a wobbly bass. Let's have a. Okay, so what I've done under here, yeah, I've got some. If I create a new sampler track, and then these are some of the other bits that I've chopped out. So kind of cool little bit. Just a lot of, you know, a lot of the sort of more interesting parts, and then I'll get a sampler, and this is why I was saying I render the files, because basically if I chuck this straight into the sampler, the key was in F, so I'll change this down to F, and then so on my MIDI keyboard I'm just like, cool, sounds rubbish at the moment, but you get the idea. First of all, what I always do in Ableton, this is my favourite sampler to use, the one that comes with Ableton. It's wicked. It's got everything you want from a sampler in it, and it's lightweight, so you can use loads of instances of it. I have it set up as my default MIDI track, so every time I create a new MIDI track in Ableton, it just comes straight up with a sampler and an EQ, which is set to off by default, but if I turn it on, it's already got a low cut on it, just because, you know, you always want to low cut things quite often. But I just have a raw sampler when I press Shift Create Track. So yeah, this here I set to 50%, and this is basically, in case you don't already know, when you create a MIDI part in Ableton, if I play a note in, by default the velocity here, this is linked to this setting here, and if it's at 0, no matter how much you move this up and down, it doesn't affect the velocity of the sampler. So I set this to whatever, 100 or 50. It just gives you, so you can play with it. Not super important with bass stuff, but when you're making drums, obviously you want to, have a lot of velocity information in your drums, so they swing and move, up and down like a real drummer. Anyway, so then we've got our filter envelope. Just take the click off the front. We've got our filter. Just going to delete this quickly. So we'll go F sharp as the main root is in F. We've got the same circuitry going on as our auto filter, and you can also set drive and this like drive shaper. So you can really mangle the sound as and when you want. And then we've got modulation, which is obviously where we get our movement from with our LFOs, and you can set it to the volume, filter, or the panning and pitch. But normally, normally, maybe not normal, but I like to do it on the filter or the volume. These are the two which you can really play with. So this is our rate, our filter rate. So if I set it, there's one that's like 5/16, and then on the volume, yeah, you hear what it's doing to the volume or the filter, and that's just making that move up and down. Yeah, you can basically just resample this now as well, make new little bits. I can mute that out. Yeah, so we've got the basic principle there. These are a couple that I made earlier. So this little guy here, so I did a really fast one. I chose a little sample with loads of the sort of more harmonic-y section sort of frequencies in it. Another little bit of movement. That's a super nice sounding one to my ears. And this is basically the process of, see, that sounds cool, completely random that I just unmuted that, and this little bit gave it another extra bit of movement. But this is kind of the process of making tunes for me, is like, make a cool sound, distort it, record a long bit out, chop it all up into different bits, and then, you know, it's really critical for me to have a good breakbeat to play with when you're doing this. It's quite easy with like the more stripped back sort of minimal rolling stuff to listen to drums and just think, oh, it is just a kick, a snare, and a hi-hat and a bit of a shuffle. It can be super boring if you don't spend a lot of time making your breaks sound cool. So even if they are minimal, you want to make sure that they still swing and sound funky, because this process here, when you're playing the bass over it all, this is like you're going to spend hours listening to the same break, and it has to be funky for you. You know, you have to like enjoy listening to it and playing with it over and over again. So what I'm going to do, just listen. Maybe just to give us a little change at the end, we'll put some pitch transposition on this last bit. Cool, so that's like, you know, a very raw little section. So we've got our first section, which is, in fact, I'll leave that out. So maybe I'll just duplicate that. Extra little bit of movement. Bit more of a overdriven, distorted madness. I mean, it doesn't sound great, but it can be filtered down. You get the idea. And then let's delete that there. And then final section, it's always good. Well, final, I've done 4, whatever. You can do as many 16 bar sections as you like. It depends how you DJ. I always try and make tunes thinking about when I'm playing out, how I'm going to be, like how I mix. I mean, I mix quite quickly. So like this last section doesn't really make any difference, but this is like something else that I do. I quite often do my last section a little bit more stripped back. Probably not the most original thing in the world, because obviously a lot of people do it, but more of a like pure subby section, just maybe with a few accents. So like, did I have a little bit which is a bit more, what's this bit? you'll have noticed at the moment that there's not a lot of sub bass in it at the moment, which is intentional. Because I will play the sub bass in afterwards with tight side chaining on, and so I've basically got more control. That's what I meant by a more sort of rolling section. That just is easier to DJ out of if you're in the mix with two tunes rather than having like loads of wobbles. But you know, if you make the tune well enough, it doesn't matter because the wobbles will flow. But it's just sometimes DJs like a less hectic final 16 or fourth 16. So you know, let's just get this onto, there you go, here's a spare channel. So this is all very quick, but it's mainly just to give you the idea. Oh, is that a, oh, that's my that was my rubbish attempt at chucking things on a sampler. So you know, I could sit here all day and just go through all this stuff, but obviously the point of this video is just to give you a sort of quick and sort of rough idea. I'll move that out of the way. There's loads more bits to go through if I want, but we've got 4/16s now. We've got the first one. Second one's a bit more. Might even try putting this on this channel. Let's have a bit more of a play with it. Sweet. So yeah, you get the idea. We've made our sub out of the old serum with the, let me just unfreeze this and then I'll do a little, here we go. So yeah, we got a harmonic overtone sub that we made. We banged on loads of mid-range stuff and played with loads of envelopes to create this, once it stops jibbing out, to create this long old bit of audio here. We went through it pretty randomly, just listened through, chopped out a bunch of little bits with interesting movement in, and then just like, you know, found some pieces we thought had cool harmonics and cool movement in, and then, you know, that was the raw bit from the very beginning of the file. Just already had the movement from our auto filter when we were making the sound, and then chopped up a few extra little bits of it, chucked them in a sampler, hit the root to the right key, played around with the filter a bit, got some modulation, and created some sort of different versions of it, and then made a sort of more simple stripped back subby bit. Obviously, it goes without saying that when making a tune, this process would take way longer, and I'd probably do this section here. I'd make maybe 5 or 6 versions of different modulations, different envelopes, and just try and find the one that's got the most swing and the most groove that makes your head nod. Ableton, I'm sure you all know, but if you don't, I use this on all of my tunes without fail, has the groove pool. Use them in your tunes. If you right click, browse groove library, you find the core library and MPC, which is a sampler, which I've got an MPC 1000 here. Which I don't know if you can see that. It has swing, which, if you don't know about swing, Google it, but it's basically way of quantizing things but moving them off the grid certain amounts, and it creates realism, or maybe basically makes sort of the timing change so it moves things a little bit less rigid. Everyone's tunes if you don't use swing in your tunes, the tunes can sound pretty rigid. All of my favorite producers either don't quantize things or only quantize, say, the snare and the first kick in every 4 bars, and then will play things off the grid. And you realize once you start listening, if you listen to hip hop like old Jay Dilla and stuff, or if you listen to Burial or anyone who makes decent music, the groove and the movement in a tune comes from the swing, and Ableton has the MPC presets built in. You can chuck them on your tune, like the drum breaks. I'll always make my drums and make sure they're swinging, and then that's what makes your head nod when you're dancing. And it's the same in hip hop. The more head nod you've got, the more a tune just sounds more cool, more vibey and less rigid and less structured. And all of this wobbly womp stuff, you want it. It's all about movement, and the whole point is dance music. You want to be dancing to it, so it it wants to be loose and fun. Anyway, I hope that was relatively useful, and not too sort of abstract. Pretty much the whole process of making tunes is kind of abstract, so but anyway, there should be a little insight into how I do things. Yeah, big up for all your support again on the Patreon. It means a lot. And gonna probably upload this long piece of bass as a sort of giveaway to this month's Patreon as well, so you can go through it yourself and have a play with all the little bits and bobs, and hopefully that'll help in your own beats. But yeah, wicked, big up, see you later.